Hey everybody, Adi here, and I'm so excited to announce something huge that we've been working on for months here at Ignited. You know, during this time of uncertainty and anxiety, it's absolutely our number one priority to provide you with the best possible service and help that we can dream up. And that's why I'm here to announce an Ignited subscription, where you get almost everything that we've ever created, from our $1,000 flagship Ignited Hero No-Hab program to our relationships intro course, as well as access to all of our workshops that we've been filming here live monthly, including workshops on alcoholism, sex and porn addiction, workshops for family members of loved ones who are struggling with addictions, relationship help, and sessions on human needs and motivations and how they impact your happiness, and so much more to come. And the thing is that you get all of this for $43 a month, literally $1.50 per day, no commitment, just help. That is literally less than the price of most 15 minutes with a therapist for an entire month of expert help. And you have the option to upgrade to a package with a private accountability coach with phone and email support for literally only $3 a day. I'm talking about having an actual person who literally talks to you weekly and helps you keep moving in the right direction every single month. And if that's not enough, we give you an entire free month of our Ignited online chats. And we have 8 to 10 that are running right now, and we're adding them all the time. Groups on trauma, relationships, addiction, mental health, and more. We provided these options so that anybody under any circumstance, whether you're alone, struggling with money, or simply suffering in this crazy time, can get excellent help, and so that you can put your mental health first. To join us, just go to bit.ly/ignited help, all caps. Again, that's bit.ly.com/ignited help, all caps. We're here to help you.
People say to me, I can't use to-do lists. I'm not a real grown-up. And I'm like, oh, that's a rebel thing. Rebels don't like to-do lists. They have all kinds of other workarounds that they use that work for them. You're much better off saying, given that I'm a rebel and to-do lists don't work for me, what are some other things people have come up with? There's all kinds of clever solutions. I don't need to reinvent the wheel, but look for that rather than say, okay, I'm just going to just keep pounding my head against this wall.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we are speaking to you from our basement in what seems like the endless coronavirus outbreak. Your entire month was it also, right?
Oh, yeah. That's why it was so weird. There's just such a weird month last month. And there's so many gifts to this, and we want to talk about that today. But really what we're going to get into as a theme for today, not just happiness, but how to ground down, find happiness, how to create rituals that really anchor us into our best selves. So we're going to get into that. But first we got our review of the week by Bob Dylan Rocks. And yes, Bob Dylan does rock. I would give them 10 stars. Well, thank you. I wish you could. I wish Apple would really do that. I look forward to this podcast like you would look forward to a favorite weekly TV show. Oh, that's so sweet. Sophie and Adi have the perfect balance of perspectives, and it shows in their conversations. They are yin and yang, if you only knew. They shine a light on various topics, and their no-shame approach to their conversation is refreshing and liberating. They bring their authenticity, honesty, and personal experiences to every episode. They are insightful interviewers and ask great questions. I would subscribe to this podcast as sunshine. Listen to this podcast if you want to be expanded and ignited. I love that. So beautiful.
Cool. It's always... Look, we also get critical reviews. It's so beautiful to get... these reviews with those of you that we really connect with. So that's really, really amazing. Thank you, Bob Dylan Rocks. Do not forget to reach out to us either by email or wherever, Instagram, send us a carrier pigeon, something, and let us know what your address is, and we will send you a care package.
Yeah.
So if you got awesome. A quote for us?
We so appreciate all of the good feedback. And you know what? The bad feedback makes us stronger. So
we'll call it critical, not bad feedback.
The horrible, bad No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so for the quote of today, I'm going to share a quote by my friend Jen Pasteloff.
Love Jen.
Jen. She was actually a guest on our show a while back. She's, I don't remember what, we'll put in the show notes her episode, Jen. But she said, what if you believed in yourself fully, wholeheartedly, believed yourself to be the badass queen you are? What could you create? What would be possible? What if you were able to quiet the inner asshole? Her thing's always about that inner asshole. Trisha talks about the inner asshole a lot. Don't be an asshole. She has a Don't Be an Asshole series with Trisha, who is from Your Joyologist, who we also had on our podcast.
Yep.
We have some incredible friends who I can't wait to see
I know,
someday.
We can't see anybody.
Love you, Jen. Love you, Trisha. But yeah, all about, quieting that asshole. We do have that inner critic. We do have that inner asshole. There is the shadows. But how do we really focus on what's working? How do we really believe in ourselves? And you can really focus on what's working when you have rituals that lock you into what is working.
Amen. I mean, and actually part of the thing is to find the rituals that work to get you in that zone. Everybody has different ones.
Yeah.
That's why it's nice to
try
hear
a lot of
about
different
a
things.
whole lot of different tools. We talked to Gretchen Rubin today, who's a master of this idea and has written books on it. And one of my favorite pieces was this thing she's doing right now, which is like for a whole year to do one thing that she does every single day. And she lives in New York, so she picked going to the Met. I don't know how many of you who listen right now have been to the Met. The Met is a huge museum already. And just think about the task of going to the museum every single day. It's like the amount of discovery that you would make. And she talks about that a little bit.
It sounds so fun.
It sounds so amazing. But also what she talks about is it was a completely different experience than she thought. And I think that's what the beauty of habits and rituals are. It allows you to have some skeleton in your life of structure that you put in place, like you said, Soph, to become your best self. And you have to test what those are. Like what I know, I have the 5-minute journal, which I love that you talked about in one of the podcasts we did recently, that when you gave it to me, you thought I would just toss it to the side and not use it. And it's been almost 2 straight years I haven't given that thing up. What's like a ritual you have in your life that people can listen to right now that really helps you connect?
So it is Taurus season. Taurus is, her as the bull. It's a feminine astrological sign. I happen to be a Taurus, so I can speak to this. And I'm a Taurus sun sign, which is usually when you think about astrology, that's usually what you know of. Like when you read a magazine and flip through and it says astrology.
That's the sun sign.
That's the sun sign. So my sun sign is in Taurus. My moon is also in Taurus. So double Taurus, which is really earthy, grounded. So even if you don't, when people talk about it being a certain season or a certain time astrologically, it's not only if you are that sign. It happens to be my birthday. It happens to be, I am a Taurus. But regardless, no matter what your sign is, you can find ways to relate to that particular astrological sign. And right now until mid-May is Taurus season. Taurus season is earthy. It's Mama Earth. It's getting outside in nature, rituals that ground us and, really make us feel centered. And Taurus is all about the 5 senses. So she loves to be in the kitchen. And when I say she, it's the Taurus is just each astrological sign has a feminine or a masculine, personality. I think Virgo is masculine, just happens to be, but it's not, doesn't mean that you have to be like man or woman. So we talk about masculine and feminine actually a lot on 2 weeks ago with Melissa and her husband, Nick, about the feminine and masculine traits. So when we talk about masculine and feminine here, we don't mean man and woman. Everything has a masculine and a feminine energy to it. So Taurus is more of a feminine characteristic. So
that's so ironic that like the Virgo, the Virgin, which most people would associate with a woman, is masculine, and that the bull, which most people would obviously associate with a male because it's a male bull, is feminine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited. I'm diving in. One of the things I'm doing that's for myself, for my birthday gift is, and my quarantine gift is committing to a tarot card course. And I'm so excited that I'm committing to that. But I'm so excited to dive into, that's a lot of what they teach is a lot of the cards. Like, for example,
I've already done that course. I'm doing the advanced version now.
Yeah. Dee's an advanced tarot card reader. But like, for example, one thing I'm learning is like the king, there's a king in all of the different
decks.
Yeah. And all of the different suits, right? And like, let's say the cups is like a king. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily a
man.
masculine. Yeah, it's not a man that it's talking about. It could be a situation. It could. So I'm so excited to lean into that. But back to Taurus. So Taurus loves to be in the kitchen. Yummy smells. She's very sensual. Loves to be in nature, feel grounded, feet on the earth, all of that. So how can you embody, no matter what your sign is, being in the kitchen more, connecting to your senses? She loves to be home and have a beautiful, like candles lit, fresh cut flowers.
I feel like you're just talking about yourself now.
Right? In many ways. But there's a lot of things that I don't actually relate to. You don't have to be 100% your sign. Many times, because of the way that the chart works, like very little of your personality might actually relate to what that astrological sign is. But yeah, there's a lot that coincidentally, whether we believe it or not, I am a double Taurus and I have a lot of those characteristics. And so it's really easy for you to connect to those things because you know so much about me. But really, it's like, what can you take from that current sign to ground you? And right now it is a very grounding time. When quarantine first hit, guess what sign it was? Aries. Guess what element that's related to? Fire. So shit was going insane. Everyone was fiery. Everyone was reactive. Everyone was freaking out and emotional. It's kind of more chill now. People are more chill, more grounded. We're getting more used to this experience, right? So how can you kind of really dig into, as we talk about with Gretchen, how to ground down, find rituals that work for you, whether it's a 5-minute journal, saying, a check-in with yourself, journaling for a few minutes about what you're grateful for, what's working, an affirmation, going to one place as a challenge every single day. Right now we're in quarantine. If you're listening to this after the fact, go challenge yourself to go somewhere that you can go every single day. Maybe it's, who knows what it is, but it's something to make you feel so anchored and so in love with yourself and what's working that the things that aren't working aren't on top of mind.
Yeah, the bottom line is, I think, keep looking. If you haven't found these rituals yet, keep looking for them. Gretchen is going to talk to you about some really, really cool tips. I'm excited for this month in general because we're going to explore relatively unexplored areas of mental health, and you're going to see that this whole month. So I'm really, really happy about it. Gretchen is amazing, brings so much wealth, such a wealth of knowledge to this. We can't wait to see you on the other side.
Yay, enjoy. Let us know how you like it by tagging all of us on social and let us know what you love most.
Whoop, whoop.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com. Welcome back to the interview portion. Today we are interviewing Gretchen Rubin, who is an incredible inspiration in the world of happiness and joy. And I'm so excited to have you today. Adit's feeling a little under the weather, so he's going to talk a little bit less today and protect his voice. But this is something I could talk about with you for hours and hours. It's something very near and dear for me, and we'll get into that more. But right now, why don't you introduce yourself to our guests?
My name is Gretchen Rubin, and I'm a writer and podcaster who explores happiness, good habits, and human nature. I'm probably best known for my book, The Happiness Project. Also, my book, Better Than Before, that's about the 21 habits of the 21 strategies we can use to make or break our habits. And then also the Four Tendencies, which is a personality framework that I came up with that divides all of mankind into 4 categories. Yes, I say it can be done. And then I also have a podcast called Happier with Gretchen Rubin, where I talk each week with my co-host, who's also my sister, Elizabeth Kraft, about lessons from pop culture, the cutting edge science, wisdom of the ages, and our own experiences about how to be happier, healthier, more productive, and more creative.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. How did you get into this? What sparked this interest in happiness?
Well, I had started my career in law, and I was actually clerking for Justice Sandra Day O'Connor on the Supreme Court when I realized that I wanted to be a writer. So I had written several books, and I was just finishing my biography of JFK, and so I had a little bit more open mental space than I usually do when I'm writing. And I was stuck on a city bus in the pouring rain, and I thought, what do I want from life anyway? And I thought, I want to be happy. But I realized I didn't spend any time thinking, am I happy? What does it mean to be happy? Can I be happier? What would you do? And so I thought I should have a happiness project and figure this out. And so I ran out the next day to the library and got a giant stack of books about happiness. And that was several books ago. I've been writing and researching and talking to people about happiness, for more than 10 years now. And, when you get interested in happiness, well, then I started getting interested in habits, because a lot of times it's not that we don't know that we would be happier if we exercised or quit sugar or read more or stayed off our devices or spent more time with our friends. It's just we're not doing that. So then that gets to the question of well, then how can you do that? And so I found that just the general subject of happiness and human nature was just so inexhaustibly fascinating that I've really been exploring it ever since.
So I got to ask this question because I was wondering about this when I was reading your bio. I can't find another person who's clerked for Supreme Court justice and then ended up taking such a massive career shift. Your father was an attorney.
Yes.
And I come from a family of physicians, and I know what it was like when I decided to not go to medical school. It was
yes.
a thing. Did you ever feel any, especially in the chase for happiness, right? Coming from this sort of very, it's held to such a high standard, such a status associated with the Supreme Court, and then saying one day, hey, I want to find out how to be happier and go write books about it. I'm wondering what that inner process was like for you.
Well, it's funny. Somebody made an even more, I think, kind of colorful shift than I did. Somebody else who clerked for Justice O'Connor left and eventually became a tenor in the Boston Opera, though he's now back practicing law. But so I thought that was even more dramatic, because I'm still writing and researching, and that's very lawyerly. I'm super fortunate because everyone in my family, everyone around me was very tolerant of me taking a big risk. My father loves law himself, but he didn't have any particular desire to see me become a lawyer. I mean, he thought I would be good at it. But when I said I wanted to try something else, everyone was very much like, okay, well, then get going. Now, it was hard to start over from the beginning, because the fact is I had published no stories. I had no clips. I had, I'd majored in English and done a lot of reading and writing, but I had nothing kind of in my playbook to show that I could write. Whereas as a lawyer, of course, I was editor-in-chief of the Law Review. I had won an award. I was clerk at the Supreme Court. I had all kinds of bells and whistles. But, I had this, at that time, I had an idea for a book that I wanted to write so badly. I kind of, in my mind, it's sort of like, that scene in Star Wars where the Millennium Falcon is caught in the tractor beam, and they're like, we've just got to let go because the Death Star is pulling us in. It will rip the ship apart if we resist. And I kind of felt like that myself. I was like, it wasn't that I wanted to leave law so much. It was like, I wanted to write this book so badly. I couldn't resist. I just had to say, okay, I am going to do this, and I might succeed or fail. And I said to myself, well, I would rather fail as a writer than succeed as a lawyer at this moment. So let me try it, and then I will either succeed or fail, and then I will see what I want to do next. And then fortunately for me, I did get an agent and I did get that first book published many years ago now. So it all worked out. But it was a challenge.
So it sounds like you were going through exactly what it was that you were like, I want to be happy, but you weren't necessarily fulfilled in that moment by your circumstances. So you were kind of like taking that project on internally as you had the idea, like you were your own project.
Yes. That book, funnily enough, was called Power, Money, Fame, Sex, A User's Guide. So it was a very different kind of book, but I had that passionate desire to write it. A lot of times people think The Happiness Project is my first book because it was sort of the first one that became like a #1 bestseller. But it was like many people, I worked very hard for 10 years to become an overnight sensation. And, for me, one of the things was that I really did feel this call to do it. Like I really wanted to do it. But another thing, was that I saw that the people around me loved law. They wanted to talk about it on the weekends and at lunch, and they were reading law journals for fun, and they were and they could remember so many facts. Like it all came to them. These were people really at the top of their game, and I was so full of admiration for them, but I was like, that's not me. I wanted to do an excellent job for Justice O'Connor. And I did everything within my power, but I didn't do one scrap of work more. I never just did something because it was interesting. And I thought, over the long term, I'm not going to be able to keep this up. These people love it, and when you love it, you've got a kind of enthusiasm and energy. Things come more easily. You connect more easily with other people because you have shared interests. I could just see that was going to become a challenge for me. Whereas in writing, like with writing Talking Shop, all I want to do is talk shop. I would talk shop morning, noon, and night because I love it. I love to talk about writing. I love to talk about podcasting. I love to talk about happiness or good habits. Any of these things I'm inexhaustibly fascinated with. And so that's kind of a sign to me that I'm in the right path.
How did you take that leap, though, in terms of being brave enough to leave something so cushioned and secure that you didn't hate your job, you just weren't in love with it? So how did you make that leap?
Well, my husband and I, we were married. We were both working in law, and we were going to move from DC to New York. And for both of us, we decided we weren't going to look for law jobs in New York. That was going to be the moment. He wanted to switch from law to go to finance. So he took a night course at GW about financial accounting. And I bought a book at a bookstore called something like How to Write and Sell Your Nonfiction Book Proposal. And we moved to New York, and it was like, and I didn't have another job. My job was to get an agent, and I just worked all day doing that. And I remember the day came, we hadn't lived there all that long, when we got a note from the New York State Bar Association, right, saying it's time to pay your bar fees. And bar fee, that's not like $20. It's a good amount of money that you got to stay to be in good, good standing in the law. And so I said to my husband, I was like, are we going to pay our bar fees? And he said, no, we're not going to pay our bar fees. And I was like, okay, this is happening. Now it turns out like you can always go back if you like pay the money and take a few courses. But at the time it felt like, oh my gosh, this is the moment of turning our back on the past and striding into the future.
Beautiful.
So part of it was easier for me because I knew very clearly what I wanted. It wasn't like I hated my job and I didn't know what I wanted to do. It's like I liked my job, but now I really, really wanted to do this other thing. I think that made it clear because I knew I wanted to write this book. So that was very clear. And as I say, the people in my life, like my family, was very tolerant of risk, and my husband was going through exactly the same thing. So he was not only tolerant of it, but he was going through the same thing himself. And so So that, I think all those factors contributed to making it easier than it might have been if the circumstances had been different.
Yeah, I think having a support system is even like one person that supports you. And, you didn't necessarily have financial security because you both, like at least when Adi and I took leaps, the other one had a secure 9-to-5 job. So when I decided to do ish.
Except for the last leap.
Yeah, the final one, no, but there was more trust in that. But as we bounced back and forth between one of us being an entrepreneur and starting our own thing, the other person had a secure job, which gave our insurance to the family.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool that he was also the one that was a little bit more trusting in that, like, no, we're not going to do this. Right.
But I do feel like sometimes people who are thinking about making a change, a dramatic change, are waiting for everybody around them to like burst into applause and tell them it's a great idea.
Yep.
And from what I've observed, often from the deepest love and sense of protection, people don't want us to take a risk.
Nope.
They don't want us to get our feelings hurt. They don't want to see us get rejected or disappointed. And so they urge us to stay on a safer path. And the fact is, one of the things is, who knows what the safe path is? Because as we've seen over and over in the last 10, 15 years, people were doing things that they thought were very, very safe and secure, and then the whole thing blew up. So there is no true safety.
Agreed.
And then also a lot of people, I've talked to so many people who are like, oh, my parents told me, well, you mentioned medical school. Oh, I'm good at research and writing. Everybody in my family's a doctor. I should go to medical school. And then 10 years later, you're like, I don't want to be a doctor. It's like, okay, I spent all this time, all this money, all this energy. And in fact, I never really wanted to do it in the first place. And so if you feel like, people are talking me into this, it's like, well, a lot of times the easy way is to drift into what others expect from you or what seems like the easy option. You don't want to have a fight. You don't know what you want. It's all very uncomfortable, but you can spend a lot of time, energy, or money on, it's not going to feel easy while you're doing it. And I mean, I went to law school. I was like, I had no particular desire to be a lawyer. I went for all the wrong reasons. I can change my mind later. It's a great education. It'll keep my options open. I'm good at research and writing. It's like, okay, well, the people who go to law school and like it are the ones who want to be lawyers. That's what law school prepares you to. It's a great preparation to be a lawyer. It's not a great default choice for just people who like to read, because
you're not
it's
exactly
hard.
reading the stuff you want to read either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, could I tell you about ERISA, the employment law? Yeah.
So what
yeah.
you do now, and
Yes.
I totally see how it came about in your own life, is you really try to make these things easy to digest, easy to process. Like, you have this thing about commandments on your blog. And I almost feel like some of the writing you do, and I'd love to understand how you realize that that's what you love doing and you're good at, is almost about like summaries and shortcuts that they can then adopt into their life on a regular basis before they want to make a big change, before they think they would ever need to make a change, in order to become more in touch with who they are. Like, your number one commandment is be more Gretchen. Like, and so for each person kind of creating their own thing, or just be more of yourself, obviously the leap you took was to listen to that inside voice and say, I'm a successful attorney. Like, I'm doing well by all standards of law from everybody outside, but I know I'm called to do something else. When was it along your writing that you started saying, okay, what I need to do is start figuring out how to package this in ways that people can absorb it more easily and incorporate it into their life?
Well, I think it was traumatic response to being a lawyer, because as a lawyer, I was just spent so much time reading things that were so long and so complicated and so boring and so unclear that I was like, I was like Scarlett O'Hara. I was like, as God is my witness, I will never write like that again. And, of course, in law, you have to be extremely precise in a way that it is very tiresome in everyday life. But even still, there's just really no excuse for a lot of legal writing, to my mind. And so I really did make it my aim to write clearly as possible. And it's funny, because when I sit down and write a first draft, it comes out extremely fancy and legal. And I read a lot of like Samuel Johnson, 18th century stuff. So it comes out that way. Like, that's how my writing is. And so what is actually then finally what another person reads has gone through many, many, many edits where I'm like, what am I actually trying to say? What are the words that can succinctly capture this? Like, how do I make it funny? How do I make it concrete so it's not just a bunch of abstractions? I mean, I run into this a lot when people are talking about things like happiness and good habits, is that a lot of people, when talking about it, fall into abstraction. And it's like, well, no one's going to argue with you that like relationships are important in everyday life or that trust is an important component in the workplace. And it's just like, well, I'm not going to fight you about trust being important in the workplace, but like, what does that even mean? Like, how do I walk in tomorrow morning and build trust in my workplace? Like, what does that look like? Or, I want to experience the moment. It's like, what would you do to experience the moment? So I'm always trying to be like, okay, how do you make it clear and how do you make it concrete? Because I feel like that's when, for me, ideas really penetrate. And so I'm always like, how can I communicate my ideas the most vividly? And now that, I have a podcast, I'm on all over social media. And so I see what resonates with people, what they respond to. And what I've seen is that people respond much more like enthusiastically, and they get it and they can act on it so much better when it's discussed in terms of like concrete, manageable ideas rather than kind of a cloud of abstract words that all sound great. But then it's kind of like you're sort of left thinking, oh, okay, what exactly just happened?
Exactly. Do you mind sharing some tangible tips for our listeners? And specifically, what I was thinking about is, a lot of people, I feel like the majority of people are somewhere in the middle. They're not necessarily like, some people are really depressed and in a really bad place and really are at rock bottom. But I feel, and like some people are super, super happy, but I think most of us are in the middle where it's like, some days just feel hard. Many days feel blah. What are some tangible tips for like, I'm kind of exhausted by like gratitude lists, like wake up and like list your, like I'm over
I hated keeping a gratitude journal.
Was over it really 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It helped me then. But like, what about those people in the middle that don't feel great every day, but want to feel better? What could you offer them?
Well, you're very right. I mean, all around the world, when you ask people if they're happy, most people say they're either pretty happy or very happy. So most people are pretty happy. And what the research suggests is that about 50% of happiness is genetically determined. It's hardwired into us. And, some people are born Tiggers, as you said. Some people are born Eeyores. That's just their nature. Then about 10 to 20% is things like life circumstances, which is things like health, occupation, income, marital status. And then all the rest is very much a product of our conscious thoughts and actions. And that's where we can really make a big difference. And so the way I think about it is that each of us has kind of a natural range. Like maybe you're a 7 to 10 and maybe I'm a 4 to 7, but we can all do things to push ourselves up to the top of our natural range. Or we can do things that are going to push us down to the bottom of our natural range. And so the question is, given whoever you are and your circumstances, which you kind of have some control over, but not tremendous amount of control over, what do you have control over to make yourself as happy as you can be under those circumstances? And a lot of these things are really small. Hilarious to me is that like the number one thing, when I say to people, what resolution have you followed that's made you happier? The number one thing that people mention, and I would not say this is the most significant thing you can do, but the number one thing people mention over and over is to make your bed. So many people find this to be a super helpful way to just get started on the day, feel like you're starting the day right. I mean, another thing, and it's so common, but it's so common because everybody knows it works, is like if you need a quick lift, listen to one of your favorite upbeat songs. Mm-hmm. So many people now have playlists. They set their alarm to their favorite song. It's like that is an extremely quick, easy, reliable way to intervene in mood. So that's that. Then there are funnier ones, like ones that having to do with kind of self-knowledge. One that we talked about on the Happier podcast, and we were surprised by how enthusiastically people got into it, was to choose a signature color. And people were just enthralled with this idea of like, what's their a lot of people said they had a signature color without realizing it. Like they looked at all their dishes in the dishwasher, or they looked at all the clothes in their closet, and they were like, oh my gosh, I have a signature color. I hadn't even noticed. Or people had a signature pattern like polka dots or stripes, or they had a signature texture like velvet or denim or leather. It's one of these things, like, you were talking about Be Gretchen. Well, it's one of these things that it's kind of fun and kind of creative. And then it also can help you with things like decision fatigue, because it's like, well, I want to buy a new cover for my iPhone. What color should I buy? Well, why don't I buy my signature color? Because, everything could be in my signature color. or things like, a lot of times people know, and I wrote a little book called Outer Order, Inner Calm about why outer order contributes to inner calm for most of us. And, a lot of people don't have a lot of time, energy, or money, so they're looking for kind of quick strategies, quick solutions. And one thing that so many people said has helped them is the 1-minute rule. This is the rule that anything that you can do in less than a minute, you do without delay. So you hang up your coat, you put a dish in the dishwasher, you scan an email, answer it in 1 word and delete it, you print out a document and stick it in a file. And what this does, it just gets that scum of clutter, off the surface of life. You can take a minute and put a bunch of dog toys in the dog toy basket. And then, so you're not setting aside an afternoon. You're not making a big production out of it. It's just as you go through your day. But it's a little step that for a lot of people can really bring a lot more outer order. And there's a weird connection when we feel like our stuff's in control. A lot of times we feel more in control of our life generally. So I'm always looking for ideas like that. Some are more transcendent, like imitate a spiritual master. That's, to me, one of my favorite all-time resolutions. My spiritual master is Saint Therese of Lisieux, even though I'm not Catholic. But I've heard of other people's, and that's an extraordinary kind of task to set yourself. So some are very small and some are very large, but they're all kind of meant to be concrete.
I love it. Do you find, so you talked about the biology, the genetic component, and obviously we are growing to understand genetics more and more in more and more complex ways. So there's epigenetics, which is the way your biology interacts with your environment, let alone
in the womb.
Yeah. From, I'm not inception, maybe, but definitely from the 3rd trimester on in terms of brain development. Has anybody done research on if there are also biological tendencies, like whether some people adhere to some habits better than others?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Oh.
Yeah, keep going with your question.
Because there's so many tactics. Like, when I read your clutter thing, I'm a relatively disorganized person, and yet clutter destroys me. Like if everything around me is disorganized, Sophie does a lot of like astrology stuff, and so I'm a Virgo, and apparently we're supposed to be incredibly organized. I'm not incredibly organized.
He desires them to
but
be
I
organized.
want everything to be really organized, which is a very bizarre place to be in. And it's taken me up until literally the last couple of years before I found morning rituals and habits that could start my day off in a way that would at least allow my day to be organized. Because I used to be, remember Palm Pilots?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love Palm Pilots and those things because the concept, I can't use a paper and pencil organizer. So I bought those things, but then I would forget them everywhere. So they were useless. Now that they're on our phones, it made my world easier. I feel like I had to find habits that fit my biology to work perfectly well together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this brings me to my 4 Tendencies framework. And this was something that I hit on in exactly the context that you're raising it. I was writing my book Better Than Before, which is all about habit change. And what I started to notice is exactly what you're noticing, which is some people seem to be better at forming habits than others. Why? And what is it about it? Is it what they're doing? Is it who they are? Like, how do you explain that? And then a friend said something that just blew my mind. She said to me, I know I would be happier if I exercised. And when I was in high school, I was on the track team and I never missed track practice. So why can't I go running now? And I thought, well, why? It's the same person. It's the same habit. At one time it was effortless. Now she can't do it. How would you explain that? Like, what's the secret sauce? And what I found is that you can divide people into 4 categories. Which I call the 4 tendencies, which is upholder, questioner, obliger, and rebel. And it's actually much bigger than habits because it has to do with how you respond to expectations, which sounds kind of boring, I know, but actually turns out to be super juicy and interesting. So I will explain the 4 tendencies very quickly. Most people know what they are when I just explain them, but you can take a quiz on my site. If you just go to quiz.gretchenrubin.com, and like 2.5 million people have taken this quiz. It's very short. It's free. And then you'll get a little report kind of explaining what you are and what to do with that information. And then I have a whole book about it as well. But here are the 4 tendencies. And like you'll recognize yourself, you'll recognize other people, you'll recognize characters from Game of Thrones. I can do all the Game of Thrones people because these are very obvious once you know what to look for. Okay. So it's how you respond to expectations. And we all face 2 kinds of expectations. Outer expectations, which is like a request from a friend or a work deadline. And then there are inner expectations, my own desire to get back into meditation, my own desire to keep a New Year's resolution. So depending on how you meet outer and inner expectations in combination, you're either an upholder, a questioner, an obliger, or a rebel. So upholders readily meet outer and inner expectations. They meet the work deadline. They keep the New Year's resolution without much fuss. They want to know what other people expect from them, but their expectations for themselves are just as important or maybe more important. So their motto is, discipline is my freedom. They have the easiest time keeping habits. Then there are questioners. Questioners question all expectations. They'll do it if they think it makes sense. They hate anything arbitrary, inefficient, unjustified. Like if you say, would you keep a New Year's resolution? They would say, I would keep it whenever it made sense. I'm not going to do it on January 1st. January 1st is an arbitrary date. They need to have reasons. They need to know why. If some habit meets their standard, they think it makes good sense, they'll do it no problem. If it fails their standard, they will push back. So their motto is, I'll comply if you convince me why. Then there are obligers. Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. So this is my friend on the track team. When a team and a coach were waiting for her, she had no trouble showing up.
Yep.
But when she was trying to go on her own, she struggled. And so obligers need systems of outer accountability, even to meet inner expectations. If you want to read more, join a book group. You want to exercise more, you need outer accountability, like a class or a trainer, or you're taking your dog for a run, and she'll be so disappointed if she doesn't go for a run, and she'll tear up the furniture. Or you're raising money for a philanthropy, or your friend is going to be really annoyed if you don't show up, or you're thinking about your duty to your future self, or your duty to be a role model for other people. These are forms of outer accountability, and that's what obligers need. They are the rock of the world. They are the ones everybody relies on, but they need outer accountability for themselves. So their motto is, you can count on me, and I'm counting on you to count on me. And then finally, rebels. Rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. They can do anything they want to do. They want to put their identity into the world. Often they love a challenge. They can do anything they choose to do. But if you ask or tell them to do something, they are very likely to resist. And typically, they don't like to tell themselves what to do. Like, they don't sign up for a 10 a.m. spin class on Saturday morning because they're like, I don't know what I'm going to want to do on Saturday morning. And just the idea that somebody's expecting me to show up is going to annoy me. So their motto is, you can't make me, and neither can I. So those are the 4.
So good.
I love it. I feel like I have to take the quiz because I found pieces of myself in a few of them.
Okay, well, if you find pieces of yourself in all, that's often a sign that you're a questioner. So I wonder if when you take the quiz, you will discover that you're a questioner.
Both are questioners. If I were to guess, I would say we're both questioners.
Oh, now, it's interesting. That's a pretty big tendency. So maybe that would kind of make sense. So the smallest tendency, it's very conspicuous, but the smallest tendency is rebel. Not that many people are rebels. And my tendency, the upholder tendency, is just a little bit larger. Those are kind of the 2 extreme personality types. The biggest tendency for both men and women is obliger. And so a lot of times people kind of think everybody's an obliger because you either are an obliger or you've been obligers in your life, but questioner is the next big after obliger. And so, and I'm married to a questioner, so I know that tendency well. Here's an interesting thing about questioners. Let me ask you this. This is not universally true of questioners, but many questioners do not like to be asked questions. They get very annoyed if people keep asking them questions. My husband is like this. He will not answer questions in a very noticeable way. Do either of you suffer from this aspect of questioner?
I guess it depends on what the context is.
It just came up for me as you were saying it. Not today because of my voice, but normally I talk a lot. So I'll speak from stage. I was a professor at UCLA. I have no problem doing that. But more and more over the last 5 to 10 years, I've had to be interviewed. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely a very different experience for me, and one where I have to kind of ready myself to, I know for a fact. So I get asked the same question oftentimes. I'm sure the same thing happens to you.
Yeah.
That is something, that's a hoop I have to jump through
For sure.
regularly of saying, and so I don't know if this is a question or trait, but it's almost like I have to play tricks with myself and change the internal representation of the question every time. Like, because a person doesn't know me when they're asking the question, right? So they're going to ask some rote, regular question, or maybe they do a little bit more research and they read about me and they ask that question. And I'll try to find a specific angle of that question and only answer that piece so that I feel like I'm not answering the same thing over and over.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I was just going to say, I think for both of us, that innate sense of wanting to provide our purpose with the world, make a difference, like that's the thing that really drives both of us. So I think like for the greater good, we're willing to answer whatever questions, but definitely we're just like on a path. We're just on a path to heal, to help, and we both have been since we were young. So like we're very similar in that way. But yeah, I'm interested to take the test. Yeah.
I think I'm going to add this quiz to our hero program now. Do you find...
because you can see how it would make a big difference with how people keep habits. Because if like, let's just pick a very simple habit, like I want to exercise more. Well, I mean, not simple, but a straight, a popular one. So if you're an obliger, you need to have outer accountability. It's like, take the class, and if somebody said like, why would you sign up for a class when you could do it on your own? It's like, because I need the accountability, right? But a rebel might not, they don't want to sign up for the class, or they don't like the idea that someone's looking over their shoulder, and they want to be spontaneous. So if you just keep saying, well, you need to sign up for a class, well, it's like, that's bad advice for a rebel. It's not, It's not necessarily bad advice. It'd be great advice for some people, but we really do a much better job of sticking to our habits when we tailor them to ourselves. Because I think a lot of times we think there's a one size fits all solution. If I could just find the perfect answer, it'll work. But it's like, well, we would all be perfect if that were the case.
In all of this advice, like even before, like if we back up, when I said, can you give tangible advice for someone who's maybe suffering and not like waking up super happy? Even before that, I didn't want to interrupt you, but like even before that is the awareness of what type of person you are.
Yes, 100%. I could not agree more.
Like if you don't know if you're a 4 to 7 and you're just always looking at everyone else for like this outward, we have to know who we are before we decide. I help people figure out how to eat intuitively. You can't eat intuitively if you're not connected to your intuition. You can't eat intuitively or move intuitively if you don't know how you move naturally or what feels good or what brings you joy. Like it all starts with a self-awareness of where am I right now in my happiness, in my joy, in my life, constantly asking ourselves these difficult questions. And it is like a philosophical and bigger picture. And what is my purpose? And all of that stuff comes first.
But I think But I think you're exactly right. But I think even smaller things, like even back to like smaller, like am I a morning person or a night person?
Totally.
It's like there was just an article in the paper today. This is an established thing. It's not up to you, and so you're much better off saying, well, given that I'm a night person, how can I move my important work and my exercise into when I have high energy and productivity, rather than just sort of bemoaning the fact that I don't wake up in the morning to bounce out of bed the way I think I want to. It's
100%.
like, and so it's much better to like, given who I am, and like you say, this is a constant. You don't figure it out one time. This is just a constant endeavor that we have to be
all the time, constantly,
all the time, and it's in all different circumstances.
And the better we know ourselves and have that alignment is magic. Like I'm 35 years old and I just figured out I don't love working out in the morning. Now I don't force myself to do that because I'm also a very easygoing. I'm not like a very militant person. But like Adi gets up every day because his system needs to know he has his morning routine in check to set up the rest of his day. I'm better easygoing. I almost pass out if I go too early to work out. Like I have had to lay down in classes because it's a 6 a.m. yoga class. That doesn't work for me. It just doesn't, and that's okay. But it took a lot of time and energy to hone that and to realize like I am living life for me, not for anyone else. It doesn't make me a lazy person because I don't want to get up when my husband gets up. It means that I'm honoring my own system so I can be a better mom, business owner, partner and person.
But I also think it lets us have more compassion for other people, because I think one thing that happens is that it's like, well, I'm right, you're wrong.
Mm.
I like a tidy office. You like a messy office. I'm right. You're wrong. You need to change, or you should just get up and do it first thing in the morning. That's the best way. And let me show you like 10 reasons why that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter what it's like, I'm one of these people. I quit sugar. I have an incredible sweet tooth. So I just quit sugar altogether. I eat a super low carb diet. And many people will say to me, like, that's not healthy. You shouldn't be so rigid. You should learn how to indulge in moderation. And I'm like, why should I? You're saying you're right and I'm wrong. I'm saying this works for me. This makes me happy. Not eating a brownie makes me so much happier than eating a brownie ever could. I'm not saying that this is the choice you should make. I'm just saying the fact that it's not the choice that you would make doesn't mean that it's the wrong choice for me.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times, either we look at other people and we say they're wrong, or we look at ourselves and we don't show compassion for ourselves because we think, well, if my husband can get up and work out early, well, maybe that means I'm lazy, or I lack self-control, or I have no willpower, or like, what's wrong with me? Or
Totally.
I'm not people say to me, I can't use to-do lists. I'm not a real grown-up. And I'm like, oh, that's a rebel thing. Rebels don't like to-do lists. They have all kinds of other workarounds that they use that work for them. You're much better off saying, given that I'm a rebel and to-do lists don't work for me, what are some other things people have come up with? There's all kinds of clever solutions. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. But look for that rather than say, okay, I'm just going to just keep pounding my head against this wall, even though it doesn't work for me.
Absolutely.
It's like my friend on the track team. Why keep beating herself up? It's like, you just need accountability. And then it's not a big deal. It's not hard once you know what's right for you.
I love that.
Yeah. I would say probably even 20, 30 years ago, it would have been a lot harder to not conform. But now, the world, including economy, right? Like you can be self-employed and be more rebellious in the structure you put in life and be totally fine. I think there are a lot of options opening up for people now that maybe were difficult to entertain before.
But even something like email versus a phone call. A phone call, you and I have to be free at the same time. Email, I can do it in the middle of the night, or I could do it at 5 a.m. Like we don't have to be, or if I want to, I want to wear my pajamas all day long. Well, you don't know that if I don't activate my camera, right? Yep. You can hear me. Or maybe I just got regular clothes from the waist up. You're exactly right. There is much more freedom, much more flexibility. But I think sometimes people don't take advantage of it. They don't say, hey, everybody on the team, it would be really great for me if we moved the meeting from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. because I'm just like, I wake up slow, and everybody could be like, okay, that's not a big deal. But sometimes people don't ask for it. They don't look for ways to do it. A friend of mine, she and her husband, he was a night person, she was a morning person. And she was bemoaning to me the fact that he was not helpful at all with their little kids, getting them ready for school. He could barely get out of bed. He's like walking around, like clutching a cup of coffee with his hair standing on end. He was totally ineffectual. And I said to her, why just let him sleep?
Yeah.
Make him do bedtime, because that's when he's high energy and you're a morning person. You're really dragging.
That's what we do.
Do it that way. Yeah. And then take advantage of it and say, well, we have different energy points that can work for us.
Yeah,
I sleep an extra hour.
Sleep an extra hour while I'm getting ready.
And unfortunately, and the reason that I keep harping on this and like saying, get to know yourself, is because at 35 years old with 3 human children, adorable ones, but it took me this long. I'm a yoga instructor. I studied philosophy. Like, it took a long time for me to realize this. If you're listening to this, get to know yourself. Just get to know yourself and then own it. There's nothing wrong. I'm a people pleaser. I know that. So I want to be like, be up and like active and helping. And should I be working out with him? Should I? No. Because that's not honoring me. And I need to take care of my space so I can better give to my employees.
I think you're an obliger. Take the test, but
I'm a complicated one.
You're framing as an obliger. Well, yeah.
So I think it's just, we're going to ask you our 5 questions, but thank you for this. And I think like the takeaway from me is like, first of all, get really clear on awareness of who you are and what type of things you like, you don't like.
Yes.
And then live your life from that place. And even just in that step of knowing who you are and what makes you tick and what excites you and what lights you up and where are you not as energetic, and like, do I like working out, and like, am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? All of these things.
Absolutely.
And then do my relationships support that or not? Is that the old version of who I thought I was? Like, these things will just in that awareness make you a happier person.
Absolutely.
So our 5 questions that we ask everyone. The first one is, what is the best advice that you have ever received?
Be Gretchen. That's advice I gave myself. But I really feel like I wish that I had hit on that much earlier. Because exactly what you say. The way to be happy, we can only be happy on the foundation of our own interests, our own values, our own temperament. And I think you're exactly right. So it's the first of my 12 commandments, and it's the best advice I've ever given myself, and I wish I had taken it a lot earlier. Like you say,
yeah,
you can be quite quite along in your life. You think you'd notice earlier, but you don't always.
Yeah, I just wish for people sooner to realize these things and to be listening to podcasts like yours and ours. And just, we have so much information now at our fingertips. Come on, guys, let's do this quicker. And what about one of your proudest moments to date?
One of my proudest moments was when the Happiness Project hit number 1. That was really exciting. I've had books, what they tell you when your book flops is your book did not find its audience. So I have had books that did not find their audience. So now I know what that feels like. So that was a big moment. I remember the moment when I heard that.
What about your hardest moment?
Oh, my hardest moment. It's weird, but I'm a really fearful driver. I know how to drive. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. So I got my driver's license at 16, but I live in New York City, so I don't drive that much. And I'm getting really scared of driving. And a lot of times my hardest moments is like, I really hate to drive, but I don't want to let go of it and sort of say I don't drive anymore. So it's that tension between something that I really, really, really kind of have an irrational fear. And I think if I were driving all the time, my anxiety would drop because boredom is the antidote to anxiety. And I do it just often enough that it never gets boring. So
are you right in the city?
Yeah, I'm right in the city.
That I have question marks around, why don't you just give it up? You're in such a city that why do you need to drive if you don't like it?
But you don't drive in the city. You're saying you drive.
I don't drive in the city. I drive very rarely. But to just sort of say to myself, I no longer drive. Well, when I go visit my parents in Kansas City and I want to go to the grocery store, I want to drive. What if my circumstances would change and I needed to go, I don't know, my daughter was living in another city and I needed to go there because she broke her leg and I needed to go to the grocery store. You know what I mean? I feel like you never know. And I mean, I can't wait for driverless cars. I
Uber
love
and Lyft.
Yeah, I love shared ride. I embrace all that stuff. Somebody was just telling me, they're like, the Tesla drives itself. I've never been in a Tesla. I was like, bring it on, because I want the world to solve this problem for me.
Me too.
Yeah. And
I hate driving.
Oh, see, well, my sister lives in LA too, and she hates to drive and she has to do it all the time. So I feel very fortunate that this is something that doesn't come up that much, but it is hard for me.
Yeah.
And and I feel like I don't know about you, but it's like most people feel like they either are indifferent or they kind of enjoy it. I wish I could enjoy it.
Yeah. He loves it. I'm just hate it.
And
But here's the beautiful thing on the heels of the conversation we just had, right? Be Gretchen, right? So it's the idea is kind of, we always have, I was going to ask, we just didn't get to it because this is so interesting. There's so many places to go. We get these rules from society about what we're supposed to be able to do and what we're supposed to have as part of our lives. And I think driving in the US is one of those things. You must know how to drive and you must drive a car is the cardinal rule. I mean, definitely.
I don't feel social pressure. I feel practical pressure.
Yeah.
I don't care if anybody thinks I drive. But I think you're pointing to something that is a tension within happiness, which is on the one hand, we want to accept ourselves. And on the other hand, we want to expect more from ourselves. And so sometimes there is a place where we want to push ourselves and go outside our comfort zone and embrace things that do make us feel uneasy or anxious or scared. And then sometimes you're just like, hey, that's just not me.
Yeah.
That's just not, I don't worry about bungee jumping because I'm like, hey, that's not me.
Yeah.
I don't expect that of myself and I don't, whatever. And I think for me, driving, in my book, Happier at Home, I talked about, I was like, am I going to say I'm going to accept myself and accept my fear of driving and just accept that? Or am I going to expect more for myself?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like I can't expect more for myself. But I think for other people, you're right. It could be a different calculation. Public speaking. For somebody, they might just be like, you know what? It's just not on the cards for me. And that's okay. And I can have a great career anyway. And other people might be like, oh, I feel like this is something that I should really
I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to get a
practice.
Hypnosis.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that there is a fun, I think like really there's something to this where we do want to challenge ourselves to constantly be growing, constantly be challenging our fears, our anxieties, getting over those humps. There's also a reality where like 99% of the time you literally don't need to get into the driver's seat. And that is the reality that we live in, thank goodness. So why push it, And there's certain times that it's like, I just don't enjoy driving. So I'm going to get an Uber,
Right.
Next question, self-care rituals. This can be something that you do on the daily. This could be something that you've been doing for a long time, or maybe a new one.
Well, I have a new thing. So my next book, which I don't have a title for and I don't have a thesis for, it's all about getting to the mind through the body. So it's about physical experience in the senses and how to get to the mind that way. And so as part of that, I decided that I would go to the Metropolitan Museum every single day that I was in New York City, that it was open. So I go to the Met every single day. And when I started it, I thought, well, maybe this is just going to be something that I'm going to have to like tick off, and I'm going to give myself all these little projects. And instead, it's so refreshing to my mind. It's just like, I let my mind off the leash. I just walk around. I do whatever I feel like. I thought maybe I would always be wanting to meet friends. I've only met a friend once. I actually like doing it better by myself. It is so refreshing is the word that I go to it and I come out of it feeling like, especially like if I'm kind of sleepy or something like that and I walk over there. So I think part of it is also like I'm walking around, I'm getting fresh air, I'm getting light in my face, all that. But it's just, I've like this doing something every day, a daily visit to someplace, seeing how it changes over time or doesn't change, experiencing it under different conditions. It's kind of like Monet's Cathedral series. So a daily visit is something that...
Has there been a day where you just don't feel like going, but you make yourself?
Well, see, I'm an upholder. And so this is the kind of thing that comes very easily to upholders. It's like, it doesn't really cross my mind that I wouldn't go.
Got it.
Yeah.
Last question. Our podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you?
For me, it's reading. I mean, reading it's my cubicle and my sandbox. It's everything I do for fun. It's everything I do for work. So many of my friendships are built around books. I feel like no matter how long I live, there's never enough time to read. I've got a giant library list. I've got a giant list of, I can't even call it a nightstand stack. It's like all over the house. So for me, that's like where I get my ideas. I get all of my ideas really, people always ask me if I do interviews. I'm like, I really don't do it. I talk to my friends. I read emails from listeners and readers, and I read books. And that's how I get my ideas. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We loved having you on. We loved the tips and the ability to really share tangible things with our listeners.
Yeah. Thank you for offering some creative happiness tips other than the things that we always hear.
Well, it's so fun to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Have an amazing day.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.